Oh yeah, welcome. So we'll get started. Let's jump straight into it. We're going to start off by talking about what's going on in South Africa, and they've had elections now. They're trying to get their cabinet together and figure out everybody's jostling for positions in the parliament. I was about to say Senate. This is not America. In their parliamentary system, everybody wants a position. Everybody wants, like I say, everybody wants a piece of the pie. So let us know what's going on, Lorato, please. Yeah.
Yeah, man. So yeah, there have been developments in that instance that a coalition has been formed. Um, Mainly, I mean, between certain parties, where mainly the EFF and the MK seem to be the outliers who are kind of like on the opposition benches.
Yeah, they're being
But the
left out. They're being left out, and
yeah,
that's to their credit, as far as I'm concerned. Continue. Yeah.
yeah, the Patriotic Alliance, the DA, the Freedom Front Plus,
Yeah.
Rise and
ANC.
Zanti, and several other smaller parties have coalesced with the ANC, with the ANC taking the lead.
Yeah. You mean with the
And
DA
yeah,
taking the lead? The DA. I'm just
yeah,
joking.
yeah, yeah. So I mean,
I'm kidding. Yeah.
um, yeah, there's been like some back and forth in terms of conversations before. I mean, we do have a cabinet now. I think they were sworn in on Tuesday or something.
Yeah.
And then on Thursday, the main economic province, which is Gauteng, where we are,
Yeah.
also then selected their provincial cabinet.
Okay.
And there were those problems.
Sorry,
I think
very quickly. So you have a point.
yeah,
ANC still comes out a little bit on top because DA didn't want PA to come in. So it's a corrupt to me. It's a corrupt union, but it's a lot worse than if DA was telling ANC what it can do. But Mackenzie and PA were like, "Nah, we're not having it. We want a piece of the pie too." Continue. Yeah, yeah,
yeah. But I think also, I mean, in terms of how the negotiations were
yeah,
sort of unfolded, it sort of became apparent that the DA couldn't have it all its own way. They had to sort of
yeah. They
make
do.
concessions. But
Yeah,
also the same could be said as well for the ANC, that
ANC.
they had to,
Uh, but the problem is that
so,
is that MK, which is I call it traditionalist, traditional values, and more towards sort of tribalism, not in a bad way, but respecting our native culture and things. And EFF, which is a left movement, which goes against the market. Both of those are being marginalized. So the market wins because the market stands for liberal, neoliberal democracy, whereas MK is more like rights for native areas and stuff like that. And EFF is for supposedly for land redistribution and things. So it seems like South Africa is still going to be a neoliberal, capitalistic country, even though DA may not have the superpower to make it go to the far right as far as racial imbalance and things. What do you think? Yeah.
yeah, I mean, in as much as there isn't that, the racial imbalance continues to exist.
It's economic.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah, because it's on an economic basis,
Yeah.
and there are things that corporate powers are doing
Yeah.
to influence,
Yeah. So at the end of the day,
development.
capitalism and neoliberalism, it still boils down to white supremacy. That's basically it. Yeah.
Yeah, basically, I mean, yeah, the funds would still be in the hands of the West.
Yeah.
So those kinds of powers seem like are being bogged down and secured.
Yeah.
And there are, I mean, there is, for example, a language that has come up in some of the discussions and the conversations that is becoming antagonistic when people, for example, challenge the constitutionality of some of the things. And now people are being called anti-constitutional
So
in
that's
some.
sorry, very quickly. That's fascism, where when you question the setup of the Constitution, and everything, you question the system. They now call you anti-Semitic. I'm just using an example. Oh, you're anti-Semitic because you're standing up for the
Yeah,
rights of
yeah,
so
yeah,
and so.
yeah,
Or now you're challenging the country. You're like Donald Trump. Or they're actually calling you fascist or you're extremist, but they are the fascist ones because they don't want an open discovery. Especially what you say. Sorry to confuse. South Africa's first constitution was only continue.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, yeah. I mean, there is this kind of smokescreen around the Constitution about it being one of the best constitutions in the world. But when you look at the disparity on the ground in terms of
Yeah.
how services are being delivered to the poor, and how inequality has grown,
Yeah. Sorry,
I
very
actually
quickly. The
say,
reason they say it's the best is because it's the most liberal. See, under liberal systems, there doesn't have to be equality when it comes to economics. It's just
yeah, yeah,
identity
yeah,
and race. It's just
yeah.
identity and race. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think, I think, I think, I think the question then becomes: this is the best constitution, but in the benefit,
Of whom? Yeah.
uh,
Yeah.
is it the best?
It's not. It's
And
definitely not
maybe
the
that's
best
a
because
discussion
to
that
me, a good
we
constitution should have a balance between liberal rights, but also between government control of economy for the well-being of everybody. Continue. Sorry. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. I think it boils down to the same point that I made, and that I've been making in all our conversations, that it boils down to social justice.
Yeah. Social justice, and that's the word we need because
Yeah,
social
like the
justice is not
constitution
pure
was born.
democracy. No. No.
Yeah,
It,
yeah.
it has
Should
rules.
be.
Yeah.
Yeah, there should be social justice reform on a
Yeah.
large scale.
But
But yeah, so that's where we
yeah.
are now. It looks like we may have taken a couple of steps, perhaps.
Yeah, I think so. And I
Yeah,
think that
and I mean, yeah, there's like some weird is also sort of, positioning itself around. I mean, I saw a very strange T-shirt that the Gauteng premier was wearing, that was saying "Don't kill Chris Hani again." You know,
oh my goodness.
like it's like pandering to the Communist Party and things like that. But I mean, they've already killed him once, and it's not like they've been keeping his legacy alive very well in terms of what he stood for, as a freedom fighter. And yeah, I mean, we still sit here with the land question as a question,
Yeah.
without any open answers. But I suppose we can say that we will see how civil society can make moves on
Well,
that basis.
the only thing I can see happening now is with BRICS coming, eh, that BRICS is not going to solve the problem because it'll make South Africa more economically powerful. But where will the revenue from that economic trade come once we've done our deal with China and everything? Because China can't reorganize how African countries operate internally. But I think what will happen is there will be more social pressure, and at some point, EFF and MK will get more power. But it means there's going to be more desperate days to come until people get angry, like what we're seeing in America, where they're going to the right, they're making the wrong movement. But in France, the left has started to rise along with the right. The right is still leading, but the left has risen, and the left blocked Le Pen from having an absolute majority. So something like that's going to happen in South Africa, in which more and more people but it can only go to either anarchy or towards socialism, which is humanism. That's what I think. What do you think, Lorato? Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, for now, I mean, we wait for what is essentially, in terms of making choices. I mean, we look at what the current cabinets are going to
Yeah.
be doing from now until,
Yeah.
uh, when we have our midterms or
My,
our
and the next
local
elections will be in 5 years, right? 5 years.
there's like a local election in between.
Okay,
I
but
think
but
in
my
2027
my
we
prediction is
have
that that's where it will start because as we can see, the dollar is crashing. The Israel war is marking the end of the Western Empire. They're becoming desperate. Russia is beating Ukraine. People are getting angry. So I think by within 5 years, there'll be an absolute, even the ANC will change its voice and become more radicalized towards the left because they'll have no choice because the dollar is on its way out. The US has a president who has dementia, as we saw on television the other day. and the U.S. is the head of Rome. This looks just like the collapse of the Roman Empire. So I think that South Africa will move somewhat to the left, but we also have to continually be vigilant because there's no final victory. This war is going to continue until humanity ends. I mean, the war between the left, the right, and the center to get where we want. What do you think? Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, the question of the global empire is an interesting one to look at,
Yeah.
to see exactly which direction it's moving. Of course, it might seem like where we are now, they're looking to strengthen the extremism and the fascist kind of statements that they're making.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah,
Well,
um,
I'll say Africa is moving towards industrialization because of BRICS. But the problem is once we have industrialization, what are we going to look like internally? Is it going to mean more wealth for Africa? 'Cause I think Africa might see an industrial boom like the U.S. saw in the 1950s, but then we might become complacent and still move towards what I will call now black capitalism, in which the elite within the black community dominate the poor and the middle class. Because capitalism is always oppression. So we'll now have black capitalism in which maybe South Africa becomes very wealthy, Nigeria becomes wealthy because of the boom from China and Russia and all of our resources. But then the question is, what are we going to do internally? Are we going to now do like Animal Farm in which there's no more white supremacy, but now the guys at the top are still corrupt? Kind of like a little bit like what happened in Zimbabwe with when Mugabe won and they were killing a lot of Ndebele people. Was it Ndebele or was he was Shona, right? Yeah.
yeah. There
And a
was a
lot of
lot of
Ndebele people were slaughtered by him. Maybe I'm wrong. Can you speak to
tribalism.
that? Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, we wait to see if history will replay itself, or if different
yeah.
dynamics will come into play.
This is why.
I think,
Go
yeah,
ahead.
I
Go ahead.
think South Africa is a very interesting space in terms of the kinds of theories that are bustling on the floor.
I have more
You
hope
know.
for South Africa because South Africa has a very strong communist party, even though it's underground, or a socialist movement and radical. And South African, especially black South Africans, I can't speak for the whites, are critical. They don't trust anybody. They don't even trust themselves. They don't trust anyone, which means that they're critical. So South Africa has a good, like we were talking about Lefifi and all these guys in the art movements. These guys are actually radical. So South Africa does have a healthy radical population and some of the smaller parties. But the problem is a lot of these parties are jumping in with DA and ANC on the other side. And to me, like the PA, to me, the PA is a middle ground party. It's I know they represent interest for people who usually live in colored areas and stuff. But to me, they need to shift towards EFF and MK. What do you think? And I think it'll happen
Yeah,
though, because
I
I
think
think Mackenzie is smart. Mackenzie will jump off of that boat when he sees it coming. Continue. Yeah.
yeah. I mean, I'm not entirely sure in terms of like the party politics,
Yeah.
in terms of where that base would move towards.
So you're
I'm
more of
actually,
the People's Congress or whatever, People's
yeah, but
conference.
I think I'm also aware of, at least what I'm aware of within my own personal sphere of influence. Um, is that the conversation is happening, especially within the cultural scene.
Yeah, yeah.
So,
And it's a very
so
strong
it's
cultural thing that I think can make a difference. But I think the
yeah, I
cultural
think
thing tends to be dominated too much by people see artists and activists as elitists. They need to go onto the ground level and speak to the people in the rural areas because I don't think they're connected to the cultural movement as much as in some areas. Maybe in not Port Elizabeth, but in the Eastern Cape, it seems like there's a better integration between culture and political movement. Maybe I'm wrong. What do you think? Yeah, yeah.
yeah, I think these kinds of rural slash urban divides um, are sort of becoming a little bit more fluid.
Oh,
Uh,
that's good.
the,
It's
the,
not
the
the case
more
in the
the
U.S.
more
It's becoming more divided in the U.S. But thank God it's
more,
becoming
more,
more
more
fluid there.
more
Continue.
divided. Yeah, I think we're beginning to, the urbanites are beginning to realize that there's something to pick up from what
And I think
would
that's due to the
be
strong cultural influence because the cultural influence with the music, guys like who's the lady that sings jazz? She's not really jazz. The one who's closer that used to sing back in the day. She's so on Beco Road or something. What's her name?
impure
the
them.
yeah, everybody loves it, but my point is that there's a fluidity between culture and music and everybody. You get my point?
Yeah, yeah. So,
So
so
yeah,
I
yeah.
mean, this is what I'm talking about when I say there's a fluidity.
Thank God I'm on the same page as you. Continue.
Yeah, yeah,
Okay, go ahead.
because we're seeing the influence of language, the influence of cosmology and things like that that are making it into the conversation.
Yeah,
And from my perspective, I think that's kind of like the national conversation. I mean, I was at an interesting art show even yesterday where they were having conversations around land. The
yeah, yeah,
artwork was speaking on the idea of land. I mean, one of the guys was commenting on how Anglo-Plats actually forcibly removed them, I think 20 years ago,
yeah,
um, from their homes, and now they're mining that space. And this happens within, of course, the current dispensation of democracy and freedom. And people hadn't thought
yeah.
that
So
they're
there's
still
a
forced
strong
removal
cultural roots
still
movement in
happening.
South Africa, and I've seen it
Yeah. So
because that's why we are here doing this show too. Because I met people like you when I was there, and this is very strong because I don't see this happening in America. The only thing I see in America is Jay-Z telling everybody to become a black capitalist Negro. You know what I'm saying? Go ahead. Sorry. Yeah. There's no
yeah,
art. There's no arts movement in the U.S. It's just a bunch of superstars. And then I love Basquiat, but Basquiat is their hero. But he was just a painter. He wasn't an activist. Maybe I'm wrong. Continue. Yeah.
yeah. So
Yeah.
yeah, I think those conversations are happening where they need to happen on the ground.
Yeah.
um, and they might change the dynamic a little bit. And I think then if if the parties are able to adjust to those conversations, then they will be chosen. But there is a dangerous kind of dynamic of people thinking of parties in the way that they think about brands,
Brands or gangs.
or
My party is
soccer
right no
teams.
matter what you say. Yeah, they're right no
Yeah,
matter what you say. Or Formula One fans
exactly.
or Verstappen versus Lewis Hamilton fans.
Yeah,
Continue.
yeah,
Yeah.
so
It's a form of tribalism. It's a form of tribalism. Continue. Yeah. Yes.
I'll always be
Is
an
he
article,
paused? Yeah.
and that is, I think, that the danger
Okay. Sorry, you paused. I said it's a
in
form of tribalism, but yeah. So I'll give you 2 more minutes because we have to balance time. I don't think we're going to have time to talk about the West, but who cares about the West? So give us 2 more minutes before you close out, Lorato.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, no, and I think then yeah, the interesting thing would be to see how the parties are able to pivot and are able to deliver messaging across. I think
Yeah.
the EFF had a pretty strong platform. um, but I think one of the biggest mistakes that the black, what I would see as the black consciousness bloc did, is that they did not unite to put out a single message. This is the EFF, Azapo, there's Black First, Land
Yeah, when they
First,
got rid of Angele, I don't want to say his last name. Angele starts with an M, MX. What's his name?
Ngutama,
Yeah, yeah,
and the PAC. And already, because I mean, there's there's some kind of infighting within that block,
yeah.
uh,
So
as you mentioned, because Multama was part of the EFF
yeah,
to begin with.
yeah,
And I think that the ANC is also struggling with those kinds of party infighting things,
yeah.
that resulted in
Oh yeah, part of the
the
ANC wants to go towards EFF and the other guys. Part of it, and I'm
yeah,
hoping they can
yeah, yeah,
kick
which
Ramaphosa
resulted
out. Yeah,
in the emergence of the MK
yeah,
and the EFF as we see them today.
yeah,
So yeah, I think these kinds of like divided narratives are costing the black vote a lot, because they're splattering it,
yeah,
because we can't unite against a single ethos
yeah,
of, of of getting land back, which is the most crucial thing, of
yeah,
resource sharing and social justice.
yeah. And I
um
like what you said because it doesn't mean that once we take the land, we're just going to give it to every black people. Oh, white people, this is no longer your country. No, the land needs to be used to feed all South Africans, white, black, colored, and also immigrants who live in South Africa. This is how the U.S. works too. Once you come across the border, you're a citizen. So South Africa has to have social justice. And like you always say, you say that you're not for Afro-humanism, you're for humanism, which means every human being who lives in this land space deserves a base level of well-being. And then we can readdress things like why some people have mansions and some people only have a small house. So quickly, what do you think? And then we'll go to Afolabi. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, the questions of redress, the questions of reparations, are still like they still loom large,
Yeah,
in as much as South Africa also has a large social welfare program.
yeah.
It's it's caused more people to be dependent on the state
Yeah.
than
Well,
it
but here's
has
what I believe though.
liberated.
Forget about social welfare. Everybody needs to have water, proper toilets, electricity, um, proper schools, and healthcare. So that it's not just about redistributing wealth. There need to be social. There need to be social. There need to be social infrastructure. Because if you have money to pay back to IMF, and then people are putting money in their pockets. And why are mine workers like Elomin that were killed in Marikana making 2,000 no, not up to 2,000 rand a month, making some people making 1,500 rand a month, and they have 6 kids. How do they live off of it? So I think it's not just about social welfare. It's about if everybody in the country deserves free education. Universities should not cost anything in South Africa. They don't cost anything in Europe. In Europe, when you're a
Yeah,
citizen, you don't have to pay for university. I'm more concerned about those things than I am about welfare. Because if education is free, you know how many people I knew in South Africa that were black that said, "Oh, I dropped out of school because I couldn't pay the fees. I'll come back in 5 years." And then they finish. By
yeah,
the time they finish, they're 39 years old. Whereas a white girl who comes from a rich family has her PhD by the age of 26. Continue, Larato. Yeah.
yeah. No, of course,
Yeah, yeah.
those are the problems of equality, of social equality, that
Yeah,
need to be
equality. Yeah. So sorry,
that,
we
that
have to
need to
move on
be.
though because I think we've already run out of time. We're not going to talk about France and stuff. We still have um Salim, but we're going to go to Afolabi. Afolabi, I know you've been waiting. What are your thoughts about this? Very brilliant contributions by Lorato. You took this conversation to places I couldn't have expected. But Afolabi, what do you think? Yeah.
Yeah, a government of coalition is somewhat an experimental thing. First of all, there are
Yeah.
going to be ideological differences. Coalition comprises of parties with diverse ideologies. How do they balance policy priorities and finding a common ground? It may prove challenging. Also,
Yeah.
policy implementation, coordinating policies across multiple parties can lead to delays or water down reforms. There will be disagreements that hinder effective governance. Then there's power struggle, power dynamics among the coalition partners. It's going to be very complex. This can lead to
Yeah.
gridlock, a government that is just static, that is not progressing because of internal interests. And then you talk of
Mhm.
the issue of accountability. When you share power, it's harder to pinpoint who is responsible for what and who is successful and who fails. There'll be bloodlines of accountability among,
So Afolabi,
yeah,
I think the answer is that they need an ideology of, I call it humanity or socialism. That needs to be the
exactly.
basis.
That
The land
binds
needs to,
that
and
binds
and then
everyone
and then put
together.
it into the Constitution quickly.
Sure.
Don't you think so, Larato? Once you put it into the Constitution,
Yeah, but
there's no more questions. Yeah, yeah,
here's the interesting thing that the DA leader said after the Gauteng selected its cabinet without the DA, because the DA set out and said they would go to
yeah.
the
The DA thought
opposition
they were
benches.
still the master. You ain't the master no more.
Yeah,
Continue.
yeah, and he was saying, and I mean, they had some valid arguments to
Oh
make
yeah,
in terms of
yeah,
position sharing and things like that, but in terms of like proportional power sharing.
yeah.
But he said that the ANC has now taken a course of its own, where they chose the parties that they want to put into
But I
positions,
keep saying
and
the
that's
audacity of these people. ANC has been the ruling party for South Africa forever. and
Yeah,
DA has no mouth to speak, especially since they represent interests that kept us into apartheid for so many years and 400 upholding 400 years of white supremacy. They have no mouth to talk because, as much as I don't like ANC, they are the democratic choice of South Africa. Continue. Yeah.
so John Steenhuisen actually said the ANC has made its choice, and from where he was sitting, he was saying good luck to them passing budgets that they need to pass, and good
Yeah,
luck to
that's
them.
like a threat, kind of like, oh yeah, you guys chose them, so now you're gonna fail.
But you see now where it puts the citizens is that when they need services, the DA will be blocking them on the basis of whatever philosophical differences and policy
Blackmail,
differences,
blackmail.
as Afolabi was speaking about,
Yeah.
and that is a troubling thing and a position to be
Well,
in
so
terms of like, cooperative governance.
so this is going to be a battle more and more power, because ironically, more and more whites will have to leave South Africa because once you have a country that doesn't have socialism, and if white supremacy only really benefits white corporate, then the other whites are the middle class. But the pinch is coming on them, which is why you're seeing all over the white supremacist world, people are revolting because now white people are suffering. So it's going to happen in South Africa. Then they're going to look to their government because white supremacy relies on it's purely capitalistic and it doesn't have what it takes to even take care of its own people, and its own people are going to start to become more and more unequal from the whites who are corporate. You see what I'm saying, Larato? Yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
I'll give you an
we'll see
example. In
how.
the U.S., most people that are
Sure,
poor, not number wise, not percentage wise, are white people now, and they're angry
sure.
in the rural areas of America, the white farmers, and that's why they're voting Biden out because they are also suffering, and they now feel a little bit of what it feels like to be black. That's what I'm trying to say.
Sure.
Continue. Yeah.
No, for sure, for sure. I
Yeah.
think I do remember that kind of phrase that they were mentioning in 2016 about Trump's base being the forgotten people
Yeah,
and things like that.
let's make America great again. That means let's make the working white man great again because they're becoming less and less powerful. And here's one thing I didn't believe. And Afolabi, tell me if I'm
Yes.
wrong. The highest the highest percentage of earners in America are Nigerians. They're higher than whites and everybody else.
Oh, absolutely.
So this is what the white people are seeing, that the capitalist system is now even betraying them. Nigerians are the highest earners in America because we've mastered so many things here and we work hard and make money. And when I heard it, I couldn't believe it. So my point being, this is what's bringing the right movement, is because now white people are seeing that their capitalistic system, which should be more agrarian and more towards the common white man, is also failing them. And the second richest group in America are Asians and people from India. Am I wrong?
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
the number one group for education in America is Asians, followed by Ghanaians and Nigerians, then whites. So
Africans, yes.
and Africa. So the whites are seeing that their system is not even serving them. It's
Yes,
only serving Biden
yes.
and
And
1%
Indians
of their
too.
population.
Yeah,
And
sure.
England, Indian. Let's go. This is too much, man. We got to keep talking about this. But let's see. Put on put on Salim if it's not too loud on the side. Salim, are you there?
Salim has left, apparently.
Yeah, I think he was having woza. The other guys were there drinking and shouting. But you guys, this is very good. So I'm gonna let Lorato take us out for 2 minutes, then we're done for today. We're not going to talk about, we don't have time to talk about the right wing movement in
Okay,
Europe.
okay.
We'll
Maybe
do that
sometime
next
during the
time.
week.
Yeah. So Lorato, take us out for 2 or 3 minutes with any last thoughts, because you were the one that inspired this show today. Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah, man. So yeah, I mean, we wait to see developments, because I've also been very cautious of making any calls in terms of which direction I think this conversation will go.
Yeah.
Um, I think we're seeing now with this government of national unity, which direction the ANC has chosen to pick for the
It's a
nation,
work in progress.
and
Work in progress. Yeah.
yeah. yeah, we wait to see how progressive it will be, because I mean we had a brief mention about Marikana
Yeah.
in our conversation, and actually there's been like also some investigations that have been happening where they found that there's a lot of illicit money flows that are making it out of the country, including from lawmen. That, you know, they've been
Oh yeah, very quickly.
storing a lot of
Very quickly.
money.
I'm going to let you continue, but I read this a couple of years ago, but it disappeared. 72% of South Africa's GDP leaves the country. But now I couldn't find the research on it anymore.
Yes,
They're
yes,
covering
yes.
it up.
It,
Continue.
it, it
Continue.
becomes very
Yeah.
hard to find. And
Yeah.
now you have a president.
Also, quickly, a lot of it is going into Australia, where white South Africans are now moving to. A lot. Yeah. Continue. Sorry.
Yeah, no, but they also have like accounts, offshore accounts in the Bahamas, and
Yeah.
I know that there were some South Africans that showed up in the Panama Papers, and things like that, and you find that actually the mining companies have enough profits to pay people a living wage.
They could pay them 10 times the living wage, and they could still be very rich. Very rich. Continue. Yeah.
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 So I mean, I don't know if we have kind of like a national government that would be able to address some of those things, and I don't think they would be, not with a Ramaphosa as a president, who's a
No, and
beneficiary of
also not without
some.
scholars like you and all of us who we have to continue doing this and disseminate it at the ground level so that every human being in South Africa can know what the meaning of BRICS is and can know exactly what's going on geopolitically. African countries don't have geopolitically aware citizens at the root base. Continue. Sorry. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, so those are some of the key issues that are the problem, you know, and we're well aware that someone like Cyril Ramaphosa has been sort of been working at the angle that he's working at for a
You're
long
being
time. I
polite.
think since,
You're being polite. He's an agent. I'll say it because I live here. Nobody can come after me. Continue.
yeah, since the 80s, he's been serving capitalists,
To the extreme. To the
you know.
extreme. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So we don't expect anything different
Yeah.
from him now. So
From him, but there
I'm
will be
I'm saying
changes because
we,
there's a new guy
we
in
sort of have.
the ANC who's challenging him. But sorry to cut in front of you. Yeah.
Yeah, but I also I don't trust the ANC. I think in as much that I don't have a lot of trust as well in the MK, in as much as they are talking the good talk, you know, because they are ex ANC,
But I think the MK they do
ex.
have some nativist values and traditional values. I think the ANC is
Yeah,
purely ANC is a blank slate. I don't think MK is a blank slate. So what I mean by blank slate is ANC is just a blank check. Tell the corporations. I do think that MK can only operate if they are at least populist to some level. Continue. Yeah.
sure.
Yeah.
But we wait
Wait to
again
see.
to.
That's the wise
Yeah,
words, right?
I think
Wise words.
it's going to be another long 5 years,
Yeah.
where we have to have some really introspective conversations as a voting bloc and as a populace, to say how it is we can advise ourselves to vote more wisely,
Yeah.
and of course the governing dynamics of the GNU and GPUs, like governments of provincial unity, will
Yeah.
actually inform us
Yeah,
on which
and it goes
direction.
back to the People's Convention that you mentioned. We need to have a third or
Sure.
fourth branch. Okay, thank you. So this has been another episode of Global Politics coming out of Nigeria and South Africa. We represent our values, but we also represent humanity. So I'm going to see you guys again later on in the week. Thank you very much for taking time out on Sunday to serve our people in the Pan-African scape, which a lot of people call what do they call it again? The African diaspora, but we just call it humanity. Thank you very much. So I'll see you guys next week. Stay tuned. Please like and subscribe to Global Politics coming out of Nigeria, South Africa, and all of Africa. Good night, everybody. Okay.
Salute.